Right, come to a conclusion with Stalingrad 42. I think I recall getting to about turn 12 at the end of the first video, and I've pushed the game on to the Russian half of turn 19, and I've called the game at that point because I don't think that the Germans' Axis forces can meet the deadline in terms of matching the required victory points to avoid an automatic defeat at the end of turn 20. Current VPs stand at 9. End of turn 19 they have to have 14. They had a chance to get 1, which would have given them 10, which they failed to get. And at the end of turn 20 you need to get 16, and that ain't going to happen. They've managed to get a foothold. There was a Panzer Grenadier division in Stalingrad, sharing the hex with some NKVD defenders, but that's going to be a struggle, as it should be. That may take a few turns, and which they don't have. So I'm going to call the game at that point. Really nice game. Plays very cleanly. I think I was starting to go through the sequence of play in the last video, and as happens when you don't really work off any particular script, I sort of started with the initial phase and then didn't get any further. So I was going to go on to mention there's only a single movement and a single combat phase. There's no sort of exploitation phase or secondary combat phase. All that happens as a result of successful combats in the combat phase, where you can create a single breakthrough group from successful attackers who can go on to potentially cause a bit more havoc during that same combat phase. And then after that you have a recovery phase, where if you're not adjacent to the enemy, units in full retreat become disrupted, and go back to being in good order. And then you wrap up the turn with a final sort of supply check, and you also remove any replacement markers for units that have received replacements on that turn. You can try and recover from full retreat and disrupted if you are adjacent or in a ZOC to the enemy, but there's quite a strong likelihood that you'll fail in that attempt. I was going to try and think of some comparisons, but I don't have anything else which covers this particular campaign with this ease. So it's difficult to say whether it's better or worse than other games on the same subject. I certainly got no motivation to find anything else, because for me it does, at the moment, it ticks all the boxes. I mean, potentially, in half a dozen plays you might think, oh, it's very pro one side or the other, but my view is that after 6 full campaign games you've probably had your full money's worth anyway. So it's definitely going to be a keeper. I hope to play it next month. As I mentioned, at a con in the UK. Look forward to that. Don't really mind which side I play. The thing I would say is that I suspect I wasn't pushing hard enough as the Germans in this one, because the German army has got three counters in the dead pool, and most of the stuff on the map is at full strength, so they're in good shape. They're just behind the curve in terms of victory points, so probably should have pushed harder sooner and taken a few more risks and a few more losses. Not much counter-attacking at the moment as the Russians. There's been 1 or 2 attempts to scare the flanks of some of the spearheads, which with some mixed results, but it's kept the Germans honest. Yeah, very nice game. There's a few rules on the breakthrough a mechanism, to call it that, which you could potentially retrofit maybe to Ukraine 43, because in that one, when you form your breakthrough group, you can go off in any direction. But in this particular release, if you create your breakthrough group not in the defender's hex, you forfeit one of your advanced hexes. And that seems quite a good rule to possibly transplant to certainly Ukraine 43 with the more open steppe where those battles were fought. I'm not so sure about Holland or the Ardennes with the sort of trickier terrain and the slightly shorter advances after combat. So time for a quick review of the map, and then we'll call it a done deal. Okay, so you'll notice there's been no change along the banks of the Don, and you start to think to yourself, could I have maybe made some inroads and put a bit of pressure on the Russians down here, maybe picked up a couple of victory points just to keep the game alive, but I really didn't see many opportunities. We did get across around about Kalach, and you'll see there they managed to extend the gauge of the railroad, so they will be able to at least reinforce directly almost into the pocket now. And here we have the city battle that's just started in Stalingrad. Chirikov, the Russian leader, came on very timely last the previous turn and was used for a successful determined defence in one of the hexes of Stalingrad. So there's now Panzer Grenadier division, which is cohabiting with an NKVD division and another flip division. So that'll take a while to press through and pick up the VPs for that hex, and that'll come a little bit too late. The incursion across the Don, which I pointed out last time, that got sealed up, but the Germans did manage to drive across and make quite a big dent into the, if I just step back a little bit you'll see, so you've got Rostov down here. That's the hex they tried to capture this turn, which would have been the single VP, which they bounced, or rather there was a successful determined defence with the assistance of some Russian artillery. And they managed to get a VP at Seltsk, and that was the sort of total of their advances. So still a long way to go. So they're only on 9 VPs. They would have had to have got at least where were they? 16. At least another one, well, another 2 to avoid sudden defeat. So they could have had another crack at South's next turn, which would have given them up to 10, but the target goes to 16, and in fact on the following turn it increases to 18, so you run a bit of a slippery slope there. And the weather's getting worse and the Russians are growing in strength, so it's probably a good time to call it, I think. So there you go. I hope that's managed to whet a few appetites to get this one on the table. So it plays really well, rules are clear, and it's certainly for me a keeper. Thank you all.